Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel today for the celebratory, I guess you can call it. Oh, people are saying I bumped the mic. Yeah, I had to move it a little bit. I used to have it set so that it was turned off and would only turn on once I pressed the button. But then that's how we got all those live streams where I was talking for the first 5 minutes and didn't realize I didn't have sound until the chat caught up. So, anyway, so let's see. I see. We'll start right away with Trashman's intro, live from the nation of inflation. It's the lady who's more accurate than a Biden spending plan, as versatile as a Swiss Army knife, and considers tardiness to be the finest of traditions. So in closing, here's Dolly. If you look in the chat, I'm always here on time. I'm just not ready to stream on time. Like, I saw you guys in the chat. I saw Chris Britt say it was the first time, or no, it was the second time that he had gotten here before I did. I seen that. I was just getting all my links together because that's the part that ends up late. And Rose Blight, thank you for the super sticker. Is it like waving flags of celebration? That's pretty good. Yeah, I guess a celebratory live stream. I do have some other topics to talk about tonight, but if we get to them, I didn't want to put it in the title of the stream in case we didn't get to them, but if the trial recap doesn't take up the whole time, then we'll definitely touch on some of that stuff. Last week, it took up way more time than I thought that it would, and so I was like, all right, I don't want to preemptively do that, but by now most of you have probably seen the news that we have a not guilty verdict, so we'll get into that, but we'll also get into some of the reactions and responses from the left and the ACLU and all of that stuff. And of course, this verdict was not reached without a lot of drama. There was a lot of drama this week, so we will get into some of that too. So before I get there, let me take a sip of my drink here because we got some super chats. And let's see who we've got here. I'll actually use this window because it'll be easier. So we have John Morgan in the house, Rose Blight, of course, Patrick Binder, Squid Monkey, Q, Darkfire Shooter, Talisman, Mitchell McNeely, Dennis Mateo, Cap'n Mac, Lone Wolf, Michael Tomlinson, Tada, Squid Monkey, Nomad 0036, Mike Sharp, Jesse Meek, Tristan Goodrich, John Morgan, and thank you, John, because I have been watching the trial in pretty much all of my free time when I wasn't working over the last 2 weeks, but there was a couple of days where I had a lot of clients because I'm wrapping up my practice, and I had several appointments, and on those days, he always sent me an email with some updates and some links, and it was super helpful, so thank you, John Morgan. Let's see, Fish and Golf and Guns, Loves a 1911, Gary Tompkins, Lionel Martinez, Daniel Kunkel, Kirk Morrison, let's see, Constitutional Carpenter, Mitchell McNeely, we got those guys already, sorry. I thought this window would be easier, it is not. Matthew Dunn, Chaotic Scorpio, Bob Messer, Cola, Angel Vexed, S.H., Angst Vexed? Oh, I read that incorrectly. Sorry, sir or ma'am. Paul Rowham, Cyclone, Kirk Morrison, MS, Carolina Infidel, Trimler. Let's see, we're gonna go back over. It's way easier on this side. Stephen Alley, Old Hog Leg, Blue Ridge Ocean, Bank the Monkey, really? Polaris 589 says, I am present. Andrew X, Mitchell McNeely, Just Josh, Mr. 27 Scorpion, Steve Peterson, Z3771 Zert, Derek Tequila, Frosty Leprechaun, Aaron Miller. Thank you very much for the donation here. Let's see. John Thomas, Just Too Lazy, David Diffenderfer, SHGA 5582, Andy Robichaud, hi Andy, Millwright Prepper, and Indiana Tony, California EDC, Hakashi 57, Jason J, Steve McQueen, Agarizer, Glenn Schlorf, Brother Breeze, Godkey 1, Wingbat 0, John B. I think we got Talisman already. If not, we'll get Talisman twice. Stephen Alley, G Keyman 565, Peter Hendon, Nor Calmiata, Rich Assay says Liberty in South Carolina, my Liberty loving doll. Thank you. The Patriot Paladin says Buck fightin'. I almost wore Robin sent me an FG or FJB shirt and I almost wore it today, but I thought that this would be more appropriate. Don't tread on anyone. I actually have no business wearing this shirt because it's not a pregnancy shirt, but it happened today. Elemental Timmy, Rabid Taz, Tom Kaiser, The Lost One, PC Gaming, and P-Fest, Shepherd's Forge, Steve Borg. Alright, I think we got a lot of the folks. Tennessee Beowulf. Alright, and I know that I got in, my goodness, the super chats today are coming in. Let's see. People making fun of the mic. Yep. Tim says, wow, you look like you've lost a ton of weight. LOL. Congrats on the baby. I have not. I have actually gained, oh, what is it? I gotta think. 20-ish pounds? 25-ish pounds? 25-ish pounds. And you're supposed to gain, I mean, I'm on track. I'm actually a little behind. But you gain like a certain amount in first trimester, and then after that you're supposed to gain a pound a week. So I'm like 2 pounds behind or something, but it's literally been all like here into the belly, and that's it. So that's good, I guess. Michael Tomlinson says, technically on time. Well, technically I am. I am sitting at my desk. Oh, goodness. Destiny Troll is in today and says, if they riot in Kenosha tonight, that's all. Sit back for the next installment. The Kenosha Kid riots again. Have you, I've seen, there's been so many good memes. I don't know if you guys have seen the one. I can't play it because someone actually put Eye of the Tiger to it, but it's like, oh, not guilty verdict comes in. Judge says, hey kid. Kyle turns around and he goes, you forgot this, and tosses him the AR. It's such a good meme. It's such a good meme. And someone actually put, and then it says like Eye of the Tiger plays. It's so good. But someone actually put music to it, so if I show you guys, it'll be a copyright violation. Stephen Alley says, LGBTQ, let's get Biden to quit. LGBFJB from New York. So I saw, someone told me that there was something that Biden recently said where he actually thought that LGBT stood for Let's Go Brandon something. I don't know if that's true, but someone told me that. I didn't look into it because I'm like, how would I even Google that and confirm it? Jesse Meek says, whoop, and it skipped way ahead. Jesse Meek says, I got so excited when Kyle's verdicts came through, I did a cartwheel into a back handspring. Okay, imagine I did all that. I actually slipped on the truck step and pulled my groin. Still worth it. I was sitting and I was watching the Rakaida, I think that's how you say it. I keep forgetting. The Rakaida Law stream, and I was on the edge of my seat, and I was in a group chat with some of my friends, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna read the verdict. And at every count, I texted them 1 not guilty, 2 not guilty, and I when I say I literally cried, I'm not using that as like, oh my god, I literally can't even figure of speech. I did actually cry. I never thought that I would find myself crying over live court coverage. But I did, and then like when Kyle just like collapsed in the chair crying, I was like sobbing. It it was bad. It took me a while to recover. We'll blame the pregnancy hormones, but some of my other friends cried too. So it wasn't just me. I was in some good company, and some folks on Twitter admitted that they got a little misty-eyed too. So it wasn't just me. Um, but yeah, very, very exciting things. The Spice Melange says, let's go, Brandon. 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 Etc. Etc. And then like Thug Life sunglasses. So what's the shirt of the day? So yeah, this is from Libertarian Country. They are linked in the description. I can give you guys an actual link here. This one is the Don't Tread on Anyone shirt, but they've got all kinds of, let me get the link for you guys. They've got all kinds of shirts, all kinds of good stuff, but this one, like I said, is specifically the Don't Tread on Anyone shirt, which I thought was really appropriate. They also have a No One Needs an AR-15, well, no one needs a whiny little bitch, yet here you are shirt as well, but that one was in the laundry, so I couldn't wear that one today. But I just dropped the link in the chat for folks. John Thomas says, I love how the Marxists are all crying how people will be afraid to riot now. Not how they phrased it, but what they meant. Well, yes, they didn't phrase it as riots, and actually Shannon Watts, well, it might have been under the mom's demand. One of those profiles has me blocked and one does not. I believe it was Shannon Watts that doesn't have me blocked yet. She had a long thread, and there were people in there talking about how now people are going to be afraid to peacefully protest. And of course I had something to say about that. I mean, and you can tell the folks that didn't watch any coverage of the trial or only read the mainstream media, legacy media accounts. And I mean, I know that we dump on legacy media a lot on this channel, and independent journalists do a lot anyways. I don't think you can consider me a journalist, because I just like aggregate other people's journalism work and bring it to you guys. I guess you would call me more of a commentator, but independent media will say, in general, rags on mainstream and legacy media a lot, and it's because a lot of times they get things wrong, but the stuff that they were putting out was just flat out completely false. I mean, and a lot of times they'll have ways of sort of stretching the truth or skirting around the truth, where you could be like, all right, well, maybe they're not intentionally flat out lying, maybe they're just ignorant or something. But no, I mean, the news reports that were coming out were flat out lies about this trial. And the worst part is they don't sequester the jury anymore. And I think I was reading today that one of the big reasons for that now is like the OJ trial, because the OJ trial went on for like 8 months or something like that. So these people were sequestered for like 8 months. But you know, they're told to not take into consideration anything that they see on social media and stuff like that. Yet today, one of the big dramatic things today was one of the jurors, when he was going into the building, was overheard saying something about like, oh wow, that media coverage is wild. something like that. And they're not supposed to be looking at that stuff, and especially with it being so biased. I mean, there are still news articles out there that are saying today that Kyle took an automatic rifle across state lines into Kenosha, and that has been we all know that it wasn't a automatic rifle. If you've been watching the trial, I am 99% sure that he did not take it across state lines, that the rifle never actually left the state of Wisconsin and was in the state of Wisconsin the entire time. He was also invited there. And there are still people claiming that no one ever attempted to take his rifle, that no one ever attacked him, that no one ever chased him. They were saying that he lied about being an EMT when I don't think that he ever told anyone. Like, he was like, oh, medic, but a medic is not an EMT. Like, he wasn't lying about his credentials. They were flat out lying about testimonies. It's ridiculous, and people were just eating it up. And it's kind of like, those memes where you're like, oh, tell me X without telling me X. It's like, yes, well, tell me that you're not actually paying attention to or watching the trial without telling me that you're not watching the trial. It's just awful. Awful. Shepherd's Forge H, thank you for the super chat. Oh, this is excellent. Jacob Rodriguez says that Evan Hafer of Black Rifle Coffee turned off his comments on Instagram. That's something that I've also been seeing a lot on social media, is how they said they, denounced him as a white supremacist, Proud Boy, and all these things, and it, you guys have seen the videos that I did, and then they threatened to dox Alex Jones over it, and it's like, oh yeah, well, turns out that he's not guilty, and it was blatant self-defense, and anyone who had watched the footage, you can tell that it's obvious. But I mean, now we have it, in the books from the jury. Now, one thing I will say that I don't know, is the judge, he got the paperwork, he read out the verdicts on all 5 charges, because the minor possession of firearm was tossed out and the violation of curfew was tossed out, because it turned out that didn't actually apply. There are still people saying that he had the gun illegally and violated curfew, by the way. That's also being printed in some of these news stories. But he read out all of the verdicts, and then, I didn't catch it, he said something about mistrial with prejudice. So I don't know what that means on top of the not guilty verdicts, because there was 2 mistrial motions that were put in. The original one was put in for a mistrial with prejudice, which would mean that the state could not try him again, they couldn't bring charges against him again, and then without prejudice would mean that basically they would get a whole new trial. The with prejudice, or without prejudice rather, motion was introduced this week after there was this big kerfuffle about the prosecution lying about some evidence, and we'll get into all of that shortly. So, I don't know what that means on top of, I don't know if he was saying, because I didn't catch it. There were some cheers on the live stream that I was watching and stuff, so I didn't catch if he was saying, all right, well, we don't need this now, or if that's on top of the non-guilty verdicts. But let's see. Okay, Patrick Binder says there were actually 3 mistrial motions and 2 were with prejudice. Blue Ridge Ocean says that bottom line, it just means that they can't touch Kyle Rittenhouse, which I think is accurate. And yeah, Acyclone Steve, sorry, I noticed that when I was I was tuned into Rikita this morning actually, and their stream didn't start right away. And then so at one point I would like, I had the window open for an hour and like YouTube just didn't refresh it. And then when I refreshed it, then it was like, oh, I'm an hour behind. Mitchell McNeedy says it means that even the feds can't touch. Well, that's good. That is good. All right, let's see. Let's get some of these other super chats, and then we'll get into some of this other stuff that's going on. Patrick Binder says the shirt looks great. Well, thank you. Fine Ape says that I would think at a certain point any shirt is a pregnancy shirt. Not when they don't fit properly. I mean, I look like one of those people with the big old like beer bellies because it doesn't fully cover. It doesn't cover the full belly. It looks like it's one of those schmedium shirts. Indiana Tony says if someone tries to kill you, you try to kill them right back. Malcolm Reynolds. Let's see. Glitter Fart says, oops, we never watched the footage because we're woke. Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. Let's see. Christopher Settembrino says, thank you for all you do. Today was a good day for freedom and justice. Finally feel like my 20 years in the U.S. Army has now been worth it again. Well, I am glad to hear that, sir. Mark Fallow says, Vanguard. Anonymous tip, thank you very much. California EDC says you gotta get the hoodie from Ballistic Ink. It's a Christmas Story leg lamp, but with an AR-15. That sounds epic as fuck. Not gonna lie, that sounds epic. John Thomas says he's a lifeguard, probably better trained than Bicep Boy. Also, I made a couple trolling comments on the BRC feed. Well, maybe you're why they turned it off. Bay State Anti-Predator Squad says he's likely going to face federal charges. You need to also remember that the federal government has close to 98% conviction rate. That was one of the things that they were discussing on the Rikita stream. They said like, oh, the DOJ could feel pressured to do it, but they didn't think that the DOJ would get very far if they did. I don't know. We'll see. Also, quick housekeeping note before we get into some of this stuff. I am not intending for this to be the last stream, but I am 37 weeks on the dot tomorrow, and last Saturday, baby tried to escape early. Luckily, she was not successful. But that is a possibility to happen any day now. So there is a possibility that I will just like suddenly disappear, as you might have seen on my little announcement video. So if I suddenly disappear, we'll say 80% chance not abducted by the feds. We'll say 80% chance not nuked off YouTube. I just likely had a baby escape. So, I was actually even ordered to take it easy this week and put a pause on the raspberry leaf tea, which I have been cleared for again on Thursday. It's supposed to help, and my dates and all that fun stuff. All right, so let's get into a timeline of some of the drama that happened this week around the trial. So, okay. So one of the things that we had is there was another mistrial motion that was filed, and this was around some of the video evidence. So this in particular was around the drone footage that was the prosecution's like main piece of evidence. So the TLDR version is they had this drone footage. It was the footage of when Kyle supposedly, like the drone goes up and you can see it starts in the top right-hand corner, Kyle running and Rosenbaum chasing after him, and then you see the altercation, we'll call it, in the cars. He shoots, he runs off. And that drone footage was allegedly supposed to show Kyle provoking an attack and brandishing his firearm at the Zeminskis, I think it was, as well as actually shooting Rosenbaum. That was what it was allegedly supposed to show. It was supposed to show that he provoked an attack by like pointing his rifle at someone. And that was the prosecution's like big piece of evidence that they really emphasized. So then come to find out that the version that they showed the jury was a HD like 1080p version. The version that they had given to the defense was a very blurry, highly compressed file that was only like 360 or 480p. And so the defense, you know, when you see the really blurred version, it really shows nothing. You see some kind of black and white-ish blobs going across the screen, and that's it. So it was found out late Friday, I believe it was, that the version that the prosecution had given to the defense and the version that the prosecution showed in court were two different things, and it was stupid fucking Binger right in court that, like, they're looking at it and he's like, that's not the same resolution as the footage that we have, is it? So he flat out admitted it. And they spent like an entire day basically arguing back and forth about this footage. And we'll check it out in this article, but basically so the prosecution gets up there and they're saying that they have no idea how this happened, and then you find out that they were airdropping the evidence, meaning they were sending it over text message for some unknown, ungodly reason, but it was like only this video that was sent over text message. And they claimed that, Miss Wisco, she was the one that was handling like the evidence and like the IT side of the evidence. They were like, it must have been her phone that compressed the file. Like, it was the receiving phone that did that, when in fact she opened it in an email in a laptop. And it turns out that the file names between the two files were different. The prosecution footage and the defense footage had two different file names. Turned out that the footage that the defense got was created 21 minutes before it was sent, and it had different timestamps. It had a different file name, and it didn't come up in court to my knowledge, but there was someone who was watching and took a screenshot when they showed the prosecution's evidentiary laptop, and they were claiming that they knew nothing about video handling, but there was fucking Handbrake right there on the desktop. So for those of you that don't know, I've used Handbrake before. Handbrake is a special program that is used for compressing videos and changing their aspect ratios and things like that. Now, you cannot take a grainy, low-grade footage in this program and magically make it 1080p. Like, you can't take some, like, standard footage and make it HD, but you can take HD footage and compress it down before you send it out. So that was a big dramatic thing, and it led to another mistrial motion. So we have this here from the Daily Wire. Kyle Rittenhouse's defense attorney filed a motion for a mistrial on Monday, alleging prosecutorial misconduct. The defense team filed for mistrial with prejudice, accusing the prosecution of withholding video evidence that could be key to Rittenhouse's self-defense argument. And it was a 7-page request that alleged that prosecutors had high-resolution drone footage but failed to produce it, showing only a grainy, low-resolution version of the footage in court. The defense said they only received the higher-resolution clip later on Saturday after testimony was over. Another big dramatic thing with this was that once this came out, jury was already in deliberation, and so there was this big argument as to whether or not they should allow the jury to watch the different versions of the footage. And there was speculation that it was a bad move to even allow the footage then to be considered, because what they did is, instead of just giving the footage on a laptop to the jury, instead they cleared out the courtroom, they checked it for bugs, and they gave the jury the courtroom, a whole new dedicated room just to watch this footage on the TVs and discuss this footage specifically in that room. And so there was some speculation that could throw the case, because there was so much extra evidence or extra emphasis put on this piece of evidence footage. The footage was used by prosecution in an attempt to prove that Rittenhouse chased the first man he shot, Joseph Rosenbaum, before their positions switched and Rosenbaum began chasing Rittenhouse. The compressed version of the footage was not as clear as the video kept by the state, the defense said in their written motion. Mentions how it was at the center of the case and was the linchpin in the prosecution's case. The failure to provide the same quality footage in this particular case is intentional and clearly prejudices the defendant. And of course, this is on top of the prosecution trying to bring in evidence that the judge had banned. This was on top of them suggesting that him using his Fifth Amendment rights was proof of guilt. The prosecution, I mean, we went over this last week, the prosecution did a lot of shady shit. And this was just the icing on the cake. Now, something that was not in this motion, it was sort of mentioned in passing in the motion, I believe, but was not put directly into the motion, was there was also, I believe Monday as well, came up the issue of jump kick man. So I don't believe that this was actually confirmed and brought up in court, but it was something that happened and was all over the news and really should have been brought up. It really should have been brought up. So you guys might remember this still here from the video footage. It's when Kyle is already on the ground and this man is kicking him in the face, right? They were calling this the unidentified man. And he was also involved in the charges, I believe, when they talked about like the unidentified man as well in the charges. And by the way, people were saying that all of these people were unarmed. Well, we don't really know. I believe Rosenbaum had a chain at one point in the night. This guy obviously had a skateboard. Grosskreutz had the pistol, and this right here, being kicked in the face. I mean, we all know that more people die every year at the hands of feet and fists than rifles, but I pointed out something on Twitter today that it's not true in every state, but in Massachusetts, in DC, in Pennsylvania, and according to the Ninth Circuit, kicking someone in the face while wearing any kind of footwear is considered a shod foot. Kicking with a shod foot is a felony, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. So if someone is kicking you in the face, you can't say that that person necessarily doesn't mean you any harm, obviously, or is unarmed, because that is felony. It's a felony, assault and battery with a shod foot, and yes, people go to jail for it. And yes, you can kill someone kicking someone in the face with a shod foot. So I just wanted to point that out. So this guy, Maurice Freeland, was suspected of being Jump Kick Man, and he is in fact in custody right now in the Kenosha County Jail, I believe it is. So he is a felon. He has a long criminal history and an open domestic violence charge. He allegedly came forward to the prosecution as Jump Kick Man and asked to receive some sort of immunity or dropped charges in his other cases in return for testifying for the prosecution and coming to the trial. And now this information allegedly came to the prosecution before the trial. And, of course, the DAs denied his request for immunity and dropping charges and being more lenient in some of his other cases, and so they didn't use him. But they referred to him all throughout the case, or all through the trial, as the unidentified man. Now, he could have potentially been a really good witness. We'll say for either side. But imagine like testifying and he's like, oh yeah, I kicked Kyle in the face. He would have been excellent for the defense. But the prosecution just pretended that they didn't know who he was. They pretended that he never came forward and identified himself. And they just kept on calling him the unidentified man. So this is according to Wisconsin right now. It says that they learned from a law enforcement source in a position to know. I believe it was actually a U.S. Marshal. That prosecutors informed the Rittenhouse defense team only last Thursday, November 11th, as the trial came to an end, that Freeland had come forward claiming to be Jump Kick Man. So they told him, they told the defense pretty much after closing arguments and all of that were done, and they had known for a while. Freeland is listed as being in the custody of the Kenosha County Jail as of November 16th. His most recent booking is listed as a probation hold with no bond because he was on probation at the time of the riots and so was not supposed to be out there. I mean, he wasn't supposed to be kicking people in the face anyways, but he really wasn't supposed to be out there kicking people in the face because dude was on probation. It's not clear when Assistant District Attorney Thomas Binger and his boss, DA Mike Bravely, first learned about Freeland's claims, the source said. Now they're saying that they had known for a while. Clearly, it would be a much bigger issue if the prosecution knew his identity for longer because the defense might have wanted to call or cross-examine him or track him down and vet the story. Wisconsin right now wrote Gravely and Binger and asked them for a comment, and neither wrote back. That was something that they talked about on Rakaita Law, is you could tell that they didn't have anyone watching the media, and they didn't have anyone, putting out counter arguments to the trash that the mainstream and legacy media were printing about the case, but they also, didn't necessarily have to subpoena the journalists, but they could have flat out asked the prosecution. They could have contacted this outlet and been like, hey, how did you confirm this story? Gotten more information. Like, they could have brought it up in court, they could have tried to get more information, and they didn't. So definitely some things that could have been changed if this did not go Kyle's way. Luckily, with the non-guilty verdict, we don't have to worry about it, but it's something to think about. Our source added additional details saying that authorities were unable to do effective facial recognition analysis to prove definitively that Freeland was Jump Kick Man because videos and photos don't show enough of his face, and because he was masked. So this story was broken first on a radio show that prosecutors had identified him, though they chose not to name him. Our source then provided his name and gave additional details, also confirming O'Donnell's account that prosecutors told the defense team that Freeland allegedly wanted immunity for an ongoing criminal case, which prosecutor Thomas Binger didn't grant. And it's so funny because the left is saying that Kyle is racist, that the judge is racist, that Kyle's lawyers are racist, but Binger is a saint to them when, well, let's see, he offered immunity to Gage for his testimony. Gage was a prohibited person who was illegally carrying a firearm and brandished it at someone, and is a white guy. He also offered immunity to other witnesses in the trial that were white guys. You know who didn't get immunity? The one black dude. I mean, I'm not saying it proves anything, but just saying, if you're going to accuse anybody of being racist, maybe it should be the prosecutor that didn't give immunity to the black guy and only the white guys, rather than the dude that only shot white people who were also criminals. Just saying. So, Maurice Freeland was on the streets the night of the Rittenhouse shootings, less than 2 months after getting a plea deal and probation in a domestic abuse case. Binger referred to the men who attacked Rittenhouse as people stopping an active shooter. Jump Kick Man, who delivered a flying kick to Rittenhouse's head after Rittenhouse fell to the ground, a move caught in some of the most searing imagery in the case, supposedly remained unidentified until the end of the trial. The jury instructions, which charged Rittenhouse with endangering his life, refer to him as an unknown man. So, there were charges against Kyle for endangering this man's life, and he came forward to the prosecution and identified himself, and they didn't use him because they didn't want to give him immunity in his other cases. Or in the fact that he was violating probation, being out there kicking people in the face. That is so shady. So shady. And here is the reference to him in the jury instructions. The third count of the information charges that on or about Tuesday, August 25th, 2020, in the city of Kenosha, the defendant recklessly endangered the safety of an unknown male under circumstances which show utter disregard for human life. Right there. Yes, he endangered the life of the guy kicking him in the face. Jump Kick Man, as he was referred to by all parties in the court, was never named in court, and he was not called to the stand. The jury went into deliberations thinking his identity was unknown. The Rittenhouse jury deliberated for a day without reaching a verdict, concluding about 5:45, so this was printed out on Tuesday. And in the closing arguments, which took place after our source says Binger told the defense that Freeland claims to be Jump Kick Man, Binger described him this way. This man that the defense wants to call Jump Kick Man, he's got no weapons, no gun, no knife, no nothing, comes in and tries to kick the defendant in the face. You know what's even better? Binger was the prosecution on some of Freeland's past cases. He knows that Freeland has a rap sheet of domestic violence charges. I believe there's even stealing a car on there. He knows that this guy is not a good dude. He knows that this is a man that is prone to violence and kicking someone with a shod foot, and says, oh no, this innocent guy, he's got no weapons, no gun, no knife, and he's not dangerous at all. Dude lied through his teeth. Oh man, oh man, oh man. And this article goes on, and they went through all these efforts to try to track down Freeland themselves before it was announced that he was actually in custody. All the people that they reached out to described him in various ways as violent, a drug dealer, all these other things. And it says that even Gage said he was concerned about the blows that Jump Kick Man and Anthony Huber were inflicting on Kyle's head. We saw a video earlier of this individual starting the Duramax fire, okay, this was a quote from defense attorney Richards in closing arguments. Says that Jump Kick Man comes in, kicks him in the face, spins his body 180 degrees. Even Gage said he was concerned about the blows that Jump Kick Man and Anthony Huber were inflicting on Kyle's head, and that we saw a video earlier of this individual starting the Duramax fire. So he came up multiple times in closing arguments. Still nothing. Still nothing. No stranger to the DA's office, including Rittenhouse's prosecution team or the system. So now he is in custody as of the 16th. And this article goes on. Here's a sample of his criminal record. Repeat possession of weed. That's kind of whatever. Misdemeanor obstructing an officer. Forfeiture for disorderly conduct. Taking and driving a car without the owner's consent, obstructing an officer, paternity case. Oh yeah, he owes tons of back child support, felony escape, 2 felony counts of misappropriating ID. He recently had that domestic violence case, convicted of escape, and he has a history of jail stuff here in Kenosha as well. Let's see. Operating a vehicle without insurance, deviating from designated lane, operating while suspended, OUI, with a child passenger, possession of pot, disorderly conduct, battery, contempt of court, disorderly conduct, criminal damage to property, battery, another operating vehicle without insurance, another operating while suspended, another disorderly conduct. Another disorderly conduct, another disorderly conduct, another disorderly conduct, probation and parole, felony. I mean, he's got quite the rap sheet here. Oh, goodness. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So, if anyone else wants to read about him, I will put that in the chat. So those were some of the big dramatic things that happened over the week. There was also an incident where juror number 54, so she was the foreman, or whatever you would like to call it, of the jury, which meant she was the one that was responsible for taking people's questions, writing them down, submitting them to the court. It was obvious from her handwriting that she was a woman. There was a lot of speculation that she might have been an activist juror because of the way that she wrote things in the requests. Some of them were not quite requests, we'll say. And one of the requests was to bring home the jury instructions. And the judge allowed that one. And that one was kind of weird too, because they're not supposed to be deliberating outside of court. They're not supposed to be deliberating without the rest of the jury. They're not supposed to be talking about the case with anyone else, and she requested to bring home the instructions. Which you can think, okay, maybe we can give her the benefit of the doubt, and she just wanted to, bring it home to pore over it. I mean, they are public, they were read in court, but the fact that she's bringing it home and specifically requesting it, To have it overnight, a little weird. It's a little shady. Luckily, that didn't really seem to affect the verdict, at least not in a negative way, so that's good. There was also, we had a couple of jurors that were heard talking about how they were afraid of public backlash, they were afraid of being doxxed. Then we had someone who was pulled over by the cops for running a red light, and it turned out that it was someone that was following the jury bus. And when the guy was pulled over, he said that he was a journalist working for NBC under someone, her name I believe was Irene Bayon. And Irene Bayon, Ms. Bayon, is a producer for NBC. I'm going to double check the first name here to make sure that I am giving you, yes, Irene Bayon, MSNBC. And she allegedly told this news reporter to follow the jury van and to, once it got to the place where everyone's personal cars were parked, she allegedly told this reporter to get out and record people's license plates so they could be reached for comment. And he was trying to actually record, allegedly, the jurors, which goes against court order right now. So once that happened, her Twitter went dark, and the judge completely banned MSNBC from the courthouse entirely because that's absolutely ridiculous. So we'll pull up, let's see, we'll get a good source on this. We're not going to go with Snopes because that's just not what we're going to do. Let's see. We'll go with MRC. They're pretty good. So, this is from MRC. In a possible attempt to follow the jurors in the murder trial of Kyle Rittenhouse home, harass them, or dox them Wednesday night, an MSNBC producer named James G. Morrison was stopped by Kenosha police after he blew through a stoplight while chasing down the jury bus as they left the courthouse. This incident led Judge Bruce Schroeder to ban both NBC and MSNBC from the courthouse building for the remainder of the trial. And he said in court, last evening, a person who identified himself as James J. Morrison and who claimed that he was a producer with NBC News and worked for MSNBC and under the supervision of a person named Irene Bayon in New York for MSNBC. There's some typos in there. According to police, Morrison volunteered this information after he was caught. The police, when they stopped him because he was following at about a distance of a block, went through a red light, pulled him over, and inquired of him what was going on, and he gave that information and stated that he had been instructed by Ms. Bayon in New York to follow the jury bus. Schroeder explained. He then said it was an extremely serious matter and that he would be banning MSNBC from the premises and would be referred to the proper authorities for further action. So MSNBC and NBC came out and gave a statement, and they said that the matter is under further investigation at this point, and the media has asked questions about it. That's the latest that I have. Oh no, this was the rest of what he said. I'm sorry. And he was ticketed for violating a traffic control signal. He's not here today, from what I'm told, and I have instructed that no one from MSNBC News will be permitted in this building for the duration of this trial. This is a very serious matter, and I don't know what the ultimate truth is, but absolutely it would go without much thinking that someone who's following the jury bus, that's extremely serious matter, and it will be referred to the proper authorities for further action. This is actually the statement from NBC. They tried to claim that it was a freelance journalist and had nothing to do with them and that they didn't order him to do it. They said last night a freelancer received a traffic citation while the traffic violation took place near the jury van. The freelancer never contacted or intended to contact the jurors during deliberations and never photographed or intended to photograph them. No, he was just fucking stalking them. We regret the incident and will fully cooperate with authorities on any investigation. And it says, notice that their initial admission that Morrison, who they didn't name, was ticketed. They suggested he was merely near the van and that he never contacted them or intended to contact them. Judge Schroeder responded to a report that we got from the Kenosha Police Department last night saying that a member of the media was suspected of following the jury van after court yesterday, reported correspondent Shaquille Brewster on MSNBC's NTP Daily at the end of the 1 p.m. hour, adding the judge named a member from MSNBC. He said he's taking this extremely seriously. He went on to say that he is investigating this further, and we also know that he's banning members from MSNBC, any MSNBC personnel from the courthouse at this time. This incident happened the same evening that NBC Nightly News edited out Schroeder's scathing rebuke of the media's grossly irresponsible handling of what comes out of this trial. He did. It was great. It was also reminiscent of when MSNBC ambushed then Special Counsel Robert Mueller outside his church on Easter Sunday. There are some transcripts here. It is, they also referred to Kyle as a murderer. Great stuff out of NBC, clearly. I see that we got some more super chats in, and oh, that's weird. It's not letting me scroll all the way down. So let me make sure that I get these. The Spice Melange said, I did shed a tear of joy for Kyle when I saw him get emotional. It was, yeah, it was something. Jesse Meek says, even if they actually did get the high-res version after deliberation ended, it needed to be presented to the court when found, or technically, it was evidence suppression and grounds for dismissal. Exactly. Exactly. John McBean, welcome to the channel, becoming a member. Squid Monkey says, need to point out, as has been pointed out, all the pictures of the rifle show the rifle without even iron sights attached. Kyle wielded a rifle in self-defense and shot instinctive. Holy crap, did anyone else notice that? I did not notice that, so good catch. This isn't me. Thank you for the super chat. John Thomas says, none of these pop-up targets were good men, including Bicep Boy. No, that is true. They all had criminal histories. Oh, Patrick Binder says there is a live stream in Kenosha showing businesses boarding up their windows. Well, let's see. Does anyone have a link for that? Erica D'Amico says, justice prevails today. Amen. All right, well, let's see. Sammy Psycho says, I'm late. Here is my fee for running late. Thanks. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, let's see if I can find a stream here. We'll put in Kenosha and see what comes up. If there's anything. Live Kenosha. But this says, okay, well, let's see. Let me pull this up and see if there's. So I'm finding a stream here that there's only 1,000 people that are watching, and it's just someone walking down the street, and it looks pretty quiet. Patrick Binder says you found it on Instagram. Okay. John Morgan says there's a political fact check that about Rittenhouse's gun. I did not see that. Nathan Huxtable, welcome to the channel, and Just Dan, also welcome to the channel. Both you guys, so there is, and I see someone asking about the Discord, so oh, Patrick, thank you for sending that link. There is a Discord. The Discord is for channel members, for folks that are on Patreon and Subscribestar. It is not currently open to the public. That might happen at some point, but for right now, it's just for, that exclusive group of the folks that support the channel in that way. So if you are a member, if you look in community posts, you will see there is a link to the Discord. It should still work. I have to refresh it every week or so. Hop on there, grab the link, and join the Discord. All right, and John is sending me the fact check article. Let's see. We will pull this up on PolitiFact. Okay. At 17 years old, Kyle Rittenhouse was perfectly legal to be able to possess that rifle without parental supervision, and they're saying it's false. Well, that is not true. Editor's note, Judge Bruce Schroeder recently dismissed a misdemeanor charge of possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18 against Kyle Rittenhouse. Isn't it something where the law is actually written that minors can only not possess short-barreled rifles? And the AR is not a short-barreled rifle? Isn't that what one of the big controversies was about? So Wisconsin law says any person under 18 years of age who possesses or goes armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. We cite the possibility of an exception for rifles and shotguns. The exception is aimed at letting children ages 16 and 17 hunt, but as is also clear, Rittenhouse wasn't in Kenosha to hunt. The same legal debate played out a couple of times during the Rittenhouse trial, according to the AP. Rittenhouse's defense asked Schroeder to dismiss the firearm possession charge during a pretrial hearing in October. Schroeder, according to the AP, acknowledged the intent of the statute was murky, but decided not to dismiss the charge. It was later dismissed. Prosecutors argued that allowing an exception for hunting-style weapons would effectively eliminate the prohibition on minors carrying the weapons. Well, I mean, the prosecution can argue that all they want. That's the way the law is written, then that's the way the law is written. In this instance, Schroeder dismissed the charge, saying he had a big problem with the state statute. Okay. So, they are saying that it is false, and it was flagged as part of Facebook's efforts to combat false news and information when people were talking about it. State law says that it is not legal. Concealed carry applicants must be at least 21 years old, but he wasn't concealing. Concealed carry is a separate permit. In Wisconsin, it is legal for adults to carry firearms in public without a license if the gun is visible. However, to open carry, you must be at least 18 years old. Wisconsin law stipulates that any person under 18 who possesses or goes armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. Okay. Well, yeah, so... And then they updated it. It's been updated to include mention that Wisconsin law permits people 18 years and old to carry firearms in public if it's visible. Yeah, but I mean, the statute has exceptions for hunting rifles, and I believe, yeah, the way that it's the statute is actually written is that it only counts against you if it's a short-barreled rifle, and that was what one of the big issues was. Oh man, so ridiculous. Okay, let's see. Let me grab some of this other stuff for you here of now some of the fun reactions here. First though, I'm gonna, for any of you that did not actually see it, I am going to play the actual video real quick of when they read the verdicts, because, I don't know, it's a nice little thing to see.
Kyle Rittenhouse. As the first count of the information, Joseph Rosenbaum. We, the jury, find the defendant H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Rosekreutz, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty.
Members of the jury, are these your unanimous verdicts? Is there anyone who does not agree with the verdicts as read? Would you wish the jury poll?
And so there we go. That is the clip there. And something that's not really talked about is if he had been found guilty, he was facing a mandatory life sentence. So, I mean, I would have been crying too. I mean, I did cry, but if I was him, I would have been having the same reaction. So, let's see. We have a thread here of some of, let's see, Quartering had a thread where he was asking for people for the salt tears of people's responses. Let's see. Oh, well, we have this from Keith Olbermann. F this murderer. That's nice. Nice. Black Rifle Coffee still has him blocked. Here we go. Salt Mine thread. The good news is that white men and boys can still kill whoever they want and do no jail time, and he killed white people. I bet little Kyle Rittenhouse is going to go right out and take some more white power pics with the Proud Boys and plan his next massacre. We have this one. Kyle Rittenhouse got off scot-free. Welcome to America, where guns are more important than lives. How is it white privilege when the only people that shot that night were white men? I don't get it. And someone's like, well, what race was this shooter? And that was the emphasis. White supremacy is still very alive, and I'm absolutely disgusted. Not surprised, though, because this racist effed country has always been like this bullshit. I don't know why I'm censoring when I swear in this show anyways. Fuck you, America, with 3 Ks. Fuck your piece of shit beliefs and loser mentality. And here's a great one from Mayor Bill de Blasio. Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum are victims. They should be alive today. The only reason they're not is because a violent, dangerous man chose to take a gun across state lines and start shooting people. To call this a miscarriage of justice is an understatement. And then he has a CNN article there. Not a single word of that is true. People equating it to the Texas abortion law. New York Times says Kyle Rittenhouse, who fatally shot 2 men and wounded another, was found not guilty of intentional homicide and 4 other felony charges in a deeply divisive case that fed a national debate over vigilantism, gun rights, and the definition of self-defense. And, I'm allowed to own spoons doesn't mean it isn't murder when I kill someone with them. If they attack and you fear for your life, if you fear for your life, you can kill them with a spoon. That's pretty funny. This is from Tariq Nasheed. The fact that Kyle Rittenhouse said on video he wished he could shoot protesters, I am not aware of that at all. Illegally obtained a gun, then proceeded to shoot and kill protesters. Correctly assumed a white judge and law enforcement would be on code with him. Proves white supremacy. Man, and it's just, I mean, this thread Goes on, on, and on, and on. Breaking, not guilty. The moral of this story: if you're gonna illegally cross state lines with an illegally acquired AR-15 and walk through a riot killing 2 people, just be white, etc., etc., etc. We had a MSNBC analyst saying that Rittenhouse was like a bank robber trying to shoot his way out.
The defense, as we say, was good enough. And the key point of the defense was arguing self-defense. As a former prosecutor, this strikes me as an odd situation for self-defense. It's something akin to saying that if you go into a bank and rob it and people are trying to apprehend you, you can then shoot your way out and claim self-defense. That's a little bit of what Kyle Rittenhouse did.
That is not at all what Kyle Rittenhouse did. Not at all. We have Dem congressmen, progressives react to Rittenhouse acquittal. White tears can still forestall justice. So Representative Adriano Espaillat from New York said, Kyle Rittenhouse is living proof that white tears can still forestall justice. A murderer is once again walking free today. Our system is terribly broken. We have a senior advisor to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee calling for civil unrest following the verdict, tweeting, "No justice, no peace." And this guy is himself an ex-gang member, supposedly, who served time for racketeering and shooting 2 rival gang members before joining the Democratic Campaign Committee. He said, I do not believe that convictions equal justice, but I am convinced that the not guilty verdict constitutes a great injustice today. The American legal system is rooted in racism and functions to uphold white supremacy. Gavin Newsom, who's been, MIA since getting his COVID booster, said of the verdict, America today, you can break the law, carry around weapons built for a military, shoot and kill people and get away with it. That's the message we've just sent to armed vigilantes across the nation. The ACLU, which purports to fight for Americans' civil rights, condemned the verdict in a lengthy Twitter thread, blaming Kenosha law enforcement for forcing protesters into confrontations with white militia groups. And I have a whole separate article about it, though it does not show the full Twitter thread. It only shows from Cori Bush, the judge, the jury, the defendant. It's white supremacy in action. This system isn't built to hold white supremacists accountable. It's why black and brown folks are brutalized and put in cages while white supremacist murderers walk free. I'm hurt. I'm angry. I'm heartbroken. So the ACLU's statement on Twitter said, despite Kyle Rittenhouse's conscious decision to travel across state lines and injure 1 person and take the lives of 2 people protesting the shooting of Jacob Blake by police, he was not held responsible for his actions. Unfortunately, this is not surprising. His acquittal comes after our investigation exposed how Kenosha law enforcement used violence against protesters and drove them towards white militia groups in ways that escalated tensions and almost certainly led to these shootings. Even if this were true, that is not Kyle's fault and has nothing to do with the case, quite frankly. It is far too easy to overlook the impact that violence in defense of white supremacy has on the black and brown communities. When the community rose up to exercise their First Amendment right to protest after the police shot a black man in the back in front of his children, police enabled white supremacist militia members. If I recall, Jacob Blake, the police were called because he showed up at his ex-girlfriend's house, and she had a restraining order against him, and she called the police to have him removed, and they showed up, and he brandished a knife and was trying to kidnap their kids who he wasn't allowed to see because of the restraining order, and that's why the kids were in the car, if I am remembering the case correctly. And he had a knife and was refusing to drop it and had been tased several times and nothing happened. I mean, case is a year old now, but as far as I remember, that was the case. Dangerous, disgusting, unacceptable white supremacy in the Rittenhouse verdict, the ACLU of Maryland added. Now, Becky Pringle, the head of the largest teachers union in the U.S., the National Education Association, said the jury's decision threatens the safety of all of us. She lamented and claimed that the decision has failed to live up to the standards of the Black Lives Matter protests of last year, which sparked hundreds of violent riots across the U.S. She said, "Regardless of race or place, we all want to live without fearing for our lives or those of our loved ones. Today, the jury in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial failed to hold him accountable for his deadly actions, threatening the safety of all of us." Well, you know what? First of all, don't fuck around and find out. Second of all, don't chase a dude with a gun. Third of all, don't show up. Everyone focuses and they're like, oh, well, he wasn't supposed to be there. He didn't live there. Okay. Yes, he did not live in that state. He lived with his mother, but his dad lived in Kenosha. I believe it was his old neighborhood. He used to work there. He was asked to be there to help protect businesses. So he was invited there and already had ties to that community. All of these other people that were involved were not from there. We're from farther away than he was. Most of the people were there to burn down buildings and to riot. If you say that Kyle had no business being there, they especially had no business being there, but no one talks about that on the left. It's all just like, oh no, Kyle wanted to go be an armed vigilante. How about these people that wanted to be little vigilantes against the neighborhood and against the police by burning down private businesses? You could argue that that's a form of vigilantism, couldn't you? But you don't hear anyone talking about that. Ugh. Ugh. She went on, the Black Lives Matter protest that defined that deadly summer in Kenosha and elsewhere called for accountability and justice through organizing. It united so many of us to ensure all communities can realize the promise of our nation's ideals: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and arson, apparently. When a 17-year-old is able to come into another community, brandish an automatic weapon, okay, kill 2 people, and avoid accountability, justice has not been served. We must be able to walk down our streets, exercise our right to protest safely, and be treated equally under the law. We know that a better future is possible. We will continue our activism to demand justice and accountability for all, she says. I will also I'll bring up I'll bring up the tweets here from Shannon Watts. I can get to them from my profile because I quote tweeted someone who was in the thread. Yep, it was Shannon Watts. So, according to Shannon Watts, a white teenager, at least she calls it correctly a semi-auto rifle, showed up at a protest in support of Black lives, killed 2 people and wounded another, and traumatized a community, and due to our lax gun laws, she says, and culture of extremism, no one was held accountable. For anyone who somehow does not know, Shannon Watts is the founder of Moms Demand Action. She continued that the verdict now allows armed vigilantism, which follows a disturbing pattern of white gunmen targeting communities of color. The only people he shot were white people who had attacked him, but, he targeted a community of color. To continue unchecked and without consequence must end. Victims and survivors deserve accountability. We will keep fighting until our system protects everyone. She also said that armed extremists have been emboldened in recent years. This acquittal sends the message that not only are there no consequences for showing up armed wherever you want, but mostly white people can shoot anyone without fear of consequences if they claim they felt threatened. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't consider when it comes to the rules of self-defense is, and if you watched Rikita, they touched on this as well today. If you consider, rich, they always say that self-defense and that gun laws only help rich white people. But then they also say that gun owners are stupid, rural, dumb, poor people, rednecks in the sticks. So number one, which is it? Number two, anyone who is like rich enough that can afford armed security, they're not worried about self-defense because they're not the ones doing the shooting or the defending if that comes up. Now, what people, and it's ironic because people talk about criminal justice reform and how black people and brown people and poor people aren't treated fairly in the courts, and the court system is against them, and that this is an example of white supremacy, blah, 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 blah. Now, who do you think faces the most gun violence in their communities? Think about it for a minute. When we think of places that have violent crime, what are some of the first places that you think of? Chicago, Compton, the boroughs of New York, the Bronx, places like this. Now, who, not to fall on stereotypes, but stereotypes come, from somewhere. They exist for a reason. Who typically lives in places like the south side of Chicago, or the Bronx, or Harlem, or Compton, or any of these notoriously violent places? Who lived in Roxbury when it was one of the worst places in Massachusetts, for example? It is predominantly poor people and people of color. Who then benefits the most from self-defense laws when they get into an armed conflict and defend themselves? It's like the one law that I can think of off the top of my head that does in fact favor poor people and people of color when it comes to guns and gun rights. Detroit people are mentioning, right? I mean, it's not like, it's not rich white people, getting shot at in Chicago or Compton that are using guns or whatever else to defend themselves. I mean, there's the question of like, okay, well, was it an illegally tamed firearm? I mean, that brings something else into the question, but the people that live in these communities that are plagued by violence are poor people and predominantly people of color. They are the ones that are benefiting the most from self-defense laws, and we have idiots like Shannon Watts and all of these talking heads in legacy and mainstream media saying that self-defense is racist and is an example of white privilege. In this case, the defendant was a white kid, but that is not the case across the board. Just putting that out there. And she continues on about like, oh, the teenager crossed state lines, blah blah blah. And then this is the society the NRA wants, she says, where anyone can have a gun. Well, I would like that. I don't think the NRA would like that. No questions asked, and people are emboldened to shoot anyone over the slightest provocation without fear of consequence. Okay. First of all, someone threatening to kill you twice and then trying to take your rifle is not the slightest provocation. Someone charging at you after they did those things, they're saying that they wanted to kill you, is not the slightest provocation. Someone pointing a gun at your head is not the slightest provocation. Someone assaulting you with a skateboard is not the slightest provocation. Someone kicking you in the face while you are on the ground is not the slightest provocation. And I don't think that Kyle had no fear of the consequences. Dude was clearly afraid for his life. He's clearly suffering from PTSD. It has been confirmed now that he is in therapy for PTSD. And you could see from his reactions in court that the kid was terrified. That is not without fear of consequence, Shannon Watts. But she says it's why the NRA supports open carry, permitless carry, and encourages armed vigilantism. And I mean, this thread goes on and on and on. And this one particular guy that I responded to here says, this just puts an open season sign on the back of every person who decides to legally protest. Arson is not a legal protest. Rioting is not a legal protest. Kicking someone in the face is not a legal protest. Trying to take their rifle is not a legal protest. Destroying businesses and private property is not a legal protest. Nothing that was going on that night was a legal protest. Shannon Watts and rando Lil Ricky Meyer Jr. on Twitter. Just putting it out there. Tim says that Kyle is Hispanic, and YouTube doesn't like it written out. Okay. I am not aware of that. I mean, if that's true, then that kind of makes the plot thicken, doesn't it? Let's see. Nathan Huxtable, welcome to the channel. I might have gotten you already. If I did, sorry. Jesse Meek says, gotta bounce. Early morning. Hope every one of you have a happy Thanksgiving. If we don't go live next Friday, I invite everyone to Discord for a vigorous discussion about Liberty Nuggets name night, y'all. Oh God, are you doing over and unders or something on that too? David McCoy says, would be nice if they could explain why it was okay for a convicted 5 times pedo to chase a minor. Good point. Then explain why the minor shouldn't defend himself. Yeah, that is a valid point. I mean, Kyle didn't know that dude was a diddler at the time, but dude was a diddler. I might get nuked for saying that on YouTube, but dude was a convicted diddler. And he should not have been anywhere near Kenosha. I don't even remember if he's originally from Wisconsin. I don't believe so, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that one. Fernando says, funny how they bring up how Kyle shouldn't have been there because he crossed state lines, but then flip when someone crosses the southern border. Yeah. John Thomas says, the biggest beneficiaries of Florida's stand your ground laws are minorities. Keeps activist prosecutors from charging minorities who are less likely to be able to afford a good lawyer. Proof you need either USCCA or Texas Law Shield. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. But that's not something that we're allowed to talk about and can't really think about. And on the heels of this, let's see. Oh yeah, here's actually an article from The Guardian actually saying Kyle Rittenhouse has walked free. Now it's open season on protesters. Demonstrators in the U.S. must fear not only for police brutality, but also right-wing vigilantes. These people, like, how, like, they're so dumb that sometimes I wonder how they breathe. Kyle Rittenhouse, the armed white teenager whose mother drove him from Illinois to Wisconsin to allegedly protect local businesses from anti-racism protesters in Kenosha, whereupon he shot and killed 2 people and injured another, has been acquitted of all charges. I don't think anyone who has followed the trial even casually will be surprised by this verdict. Well, then why are we saying that now it's open season on protesters? Cass Mudd from The Guardian. After the various antics by the elected judge, which seemed to indicate where his sympathies lay, and the fact that the prosecution asked the jurors to consider charges lesser than murder, the writing was on the wall. Okay, so it's the judge's fault, and because the prosecution was like, oh, we'll consider these lesser charges as well. The jury could have found him guilty on lesser charges, and they did not. And she says, well, I'm not going to discuss the legal particulars of the verdict. Right, because you don't have an argument in your favor. It's clear that the prosecution made many mistakes and got little to no leeway from the judge. That is so not true, unlike the defense team. Moreover, we know that self-defense, often better known as vigilantism, she claims is legally protected and highly racialized in this country. Think of the acquittal of George Zimmerman of the killing of Trayvon Martin in 2013. See, that's another thing. Everyone goes, all of these things are like, oh, self-defense is vigilantism because of George Zimmerman. How about the woman who shoots someone that's trying to rape her? How about wasn't there a case a while back of a woman who was hiding in the crawl space of her attic because she heard people breaking into her house? She retreated, which she did not have the duty to do. She retreated into the crawl space of her attic and hid, and still the dudes were coming through the house. They were going through the house, and they found her, and she had a revolver, and she went bam, 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 and shot the guy. How would that be considered vigilantism? That is self-defense, and I believe that she was cleared on that because of self-defense. Why is no one thinking about that? Why is no one bringing up the cases of, women who are in their cars with their infants and someone tries to carjack them or kidnap them? Why is no one bringing up the cases of grandmas and grandpas getting their houses broken into and getting threatened with death? And then they shoot their intruders? Like, no one talks about that in these kind of cases. It's just like, oh no, white armed vigilantes. In essence, the Rittenhouse ruling has created a kind of stand your ground law for the whole country. No, I mean, it's good that they upheld the right to self-defense, but self-defense, the right to self-defense exists regardless of the Constitution. It's not granted by the Constitution. It's not granted by state laws. It is a right that just exists in the universe for being a human being. The fact that the court followed the rule of law does not create a stand your ground law for the entire country. It would be cool if it did, but that's not how it works. Certainly this case might be used later for precedents for other cases, but it was based on state law in the state of Wisconsin. In the coming hours and days, many media outlets will eagerly await riots or other potentially violent reactions from the other side, from the anti-racists and progressives of all colors and races who are disturbed by this verdict, and use the existence of those riots if they occur to push a misguided both sides frame. If there is protest or rioting, don't expect the police to be as courteous and supportive as they were towards Rittenhouse and his far-right buddies. The most worrying effect of this verdict may be this: giving right-wing vigilantes a legal precedence to take up arms against anyone they consider a threat, which pretty much runs from anti-fascists to so-called rhinos, and includes almost all people of color, means it is now open hunting season on progressive protesters. So she is claiming that now right-wing vigilantes are going to go after all the black people, all the brown people, all the minorities, rhinos, and Antifa, and anti-racists and BLM because of this verdict. Now, it's kind of funny because who was it last year that was calling for violence against Trump and Trump supporters? Well, let's see. I remember Kathy Griffin doing that. I remember Jim Carrey doing that. I remember Maxine Waters doing that. I remember Nancy Pelosi doing that. I remember the left and the left media in general doing that. I don't see any articles about the verdict from right-wing sources saying, oh yes, let's go hunt some rhinos now, let's go hunt some BLM, let's go hunt some black people or some Antifa. No, I don't see any of that, so I don't know where she's getting that from. But one good thing on the heels of all of this, well, actually, first, before we get to the good thing, well, a good aside thing, we'll say, because, I mean, the story itself is good about the not guilty verdict. We even have Al Sharpton coming out and saying that the Rittenhouse case means that right-wingers can now legally infiltrate protests to bait people like him to act violently. So this, he appeared on Deadline the White House. MSNBC host, of course it's NBC, who is banned from the courtroom. Host Reverend Al Sharpton argued that right-wingers can put people in your protest to bait these kinds of interactions, and a Kyle type can therefore then become a hero coming in with violence and solving a problem that was instigated by people that really wasn't on your side. Well, that's interesting because that is an Antifa tactic now, isn't it? How about that big riot that was supposed to happen, that conservatives were supposed to be like descending on the White House or something like that, this big rally, and it turned out that all of the people that were arrested were feds, you know, a few weeks ago. But no, now it's free and legal for people to go and instigate and put plants in protests to instigate violence and then shoot people, according to Al Sharpton. Absolutely ridiculous. But here's something cool. According to a Gallup poll that was recently done, gun control support drops to lowest level since 2014. A new Gallup poll shows support for stricter gun control has dropped 5 percentage points to the lowest level it has been since 2014, and a separate Gallup survey shows 4 more people own guns for personal protection against crime, a revelation that doesn't surprise one of the nation's leading gun rights advocates. Well, that's another thing in the Rittenhouse trial. I don't know how the information was gotten, so I cannot confirm it, but I did see that allegedly 15 of the 18 original chosen jurors were either firearms owners themselves or had experience with firearms, and 8 of those people with firearms experience were women. And of that 15, most of them were gun owners or their spouses were gun owners. There was a couple people that it sounded like they even were veterans from the experience that they listed. Many of them were hunters, so they all knew that, you know, accusations of the AR being an automatic rifle were incorrect. And so when I saw that yesterday, I was like, okay, maybe this could go well, even though that one juror asked to bring home the instructions, and, you know, there were fears of doxing and things like that. So that was pretty neat. But I mean, it's also like Wisconsin, which people were saying most of the state is gun owners. According to Gallup, support for stricter gun laws has declined to 52%, while 35% of U.S. adults believe current laws covering the sale of firearms should be kept as they are now. 11% want fewer gun laws. Back in 1990, according to the polling company, when the nation's crime rate was high, a record 78% of Americans supported stricter gun sales, or stricter laws for gun sales. So that is a huge drop since the 90s. Another Gallup survey shows a whopping 88% of gun owners saying personal protection from crime is the reason they own firearms. That's up from 67% who said it back in 2005. It's likely because of everything that was happening last year. A big part of that would be my guess. And then it says, look at the headlines. They all seem to say the same thing. Fewer police officers on the street, bigger response times. For example, the Portland Police Bureau reported it currently deploys fewer sworn officers than at any point in the past 30 years. We also had, I believe it was it LA that just came out and said, yes, actually, I had this ready to go. LAPD tells citizens we can't help you, so cooperate and comply with criminals and be a good witness. So the cops are saying, well, if you are a victim of a crime, we can't help you. And just sit there and take it. So, of course, that's also going to lead to more people becoming gun owners. LA residents are living through a nightmare scenario. The local district attorney announced he's releasing a 24-year-old convicted murderer after serving only 6 years of a 50-year sentence. Police are at the same time telling everyone, including would-be criminals, that they're unable to quickly respond to calls for help and that crime victims should just cooperate and comply with the perpetrators. That is, of course, on top of California's insane gun laws. The LAPD tweeted a warning that they're in the midst of a surging crime wave, including increased so-called follow-home burglaries, and that is, of course, where a criminal watches their victim leave a store or some other building or place and then follows them home and robs them. The paltry warning is frustrating for sure, but after caving to defund the police activists last year, the LA City Council voted 12-2 to cut $150 million from this year's police budget. That's left law enforcement reduced and resulting to public safety by press release. So here is the community bulletin that they posted on Twitter. It says, community alert notification, area safety bulletin. Due to an increase in violent street robberies, Robbery Homicide Division has become aware of an ongoing crime trend of follow-home robberies. Suspects have been locating victims in LA, following them and committing the robberies as the victim arrives home or at their business. Victims have been followed from such places like Melrose Avenue, the jewelry district of LA, nightclubs, and high-end restaurants. The target of these robberies has been expensive jewelry, including watches and necklaces, as well as expensive purses. Victims have also been targeted based on the type of vehicle they are driving. These crimes have occurred throughout the city of LA, as well as neighboring cities. Different suspects have been identified and arrested for these types of crimes. And here are the recommendations from the LAPD. Be aware of your surroundings for anything unusual or out of the ordinary before exiting your car, restaurant, store, mall, etc. Be cautious of displaying high-value property in public. Record and report suspicious activity to the police. If you are driving and believe you are being followed, dial 911. Or, if possible, drive to the nearest police station. If you are being robbed, do not resist the robbery suspects. Cooperate and comply with their demands. Be a good witness. That's where it says it right there. And of course, it's right where my window is for my camera, but that's what it says on the bulletin. And then it says, after a robbery, immediately call the police and do not chase or follow the suspect out of your place of business or home. Leave the job of catching these suspects to the police. And then it says at the bottom, for public distribution inside and outside of the police department, prepared for use by news media. So, comply and be a good witness, says the LAPD. The Boston Police Department has put out similar notices in the past. Detroit put out similar notices in the past. So this really is nothing new. And then folks are like, oh, well, why is gun ownership going up? I wonder. Gardner says, hey LD, you rock, read Kyle Rittenhouse. I got in after wondering if CBS understands the meaning of defamation. Really looking forward to these suits like I've been given a gift certificate to the finest tailor. Yes, CBS, I believe, is the outlet that posted the tweet calling Kyle a murderer while the trial was ongoing. So, that was great. I do think that there are going to be some defamation suits. It's been suggested that he could even sue Joe Biden because Joe Biden did have that campaign ad calling Kyle a white supremacist that was posted all over social media. So that is definitely a possibility. I mean, that would be something if he was able to sue Joe Biden for defamation. I mean, the Covington Catholic kid, what was his name? Like Nick Sandman? I mean, I believe they ended up settling out of court, but he got a lot of money for that. And I mean, if they settled, it's because he would have won. So definitely, I mean, I think that he has a case for defamation against several news outlets. Nomad says you can't sue the president, but he might be able to sue like the communications director or something like that, or whoever was involved, because it was a campaign ad before he won. So it would likely be that he would be suing the DNC for defamation, which would be pretty awesome. He could go after all of the major media outlets, MSN, NBC, CBS, CNN. He could go after all of them. He really, really could. We have even this little clip here from NBC News, warning of future active shooting situations because of the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict.
I think when we sit with this verdict, what we are going to look at is the really dangerous combination of liberal self-defense laws, like the ones in Wisconsin around the country, and the accessibility of guns, because in the end, his argument, which prevailed, was that his own gun, Kyle Rittenhouse's own gun, is what put him in danger and what justified him using deadly force. If he had not had that gun in his hand, then he would not have been in a position to invoke the self-defense theory.
It's not strictly about self-defense in my view. I mean, there is the issue of how the prosecution presented its case. Had prosecution presented the case all along that it presented in its closing arguments, namely that the people Kyle Rittenhouse says he perceives as a deadly threat. Actually, the reason they were coming at him was they perceived him as a deadly threat because he had this huge military-style weapon and running up and down
military style,
trying to, in effect, protect themselves. What concerns me, though, is that the result will be seen as a vindication of vigilantism. Of what Kyle Rittenhouse was doing, the larger context of what he was doing, during these demonstrations over the shooting of Jacob Blake. He came across state lines carrying a military-style assault weapon.
And see, that's what I mean of these outlets that, hit the wrong button, that are still saying that he illegally obtained an automatic rifle, a military rifle, and brought it across state lines when that is not the case of what happened at all. The Brady campaign also came out and made a statement, and they blamed the so-called gun lobby. They have issued a statement saying, following the not guilty verdicts, Brady decries this miscarriage of justice and reiterates that armed vigilantism resulting in death of our fellow Americans is murder and is no basis for a valid claim of self-defense. Americans have a right to live in a civil society without the fear or reality of being shot in a public place while exercising their basic rights, including constitutional rights protected by the First Amendment. But you know, if it was a black kid, if Kyle had been a black kid, they would be singing a very different tune right now. A gun owner's singular right under the Second Amendment cannot and should not be interpreted to deny the rights of other citizens to live and to exercise their fundamental rights while they are alive. Well, what about Kyle's right to not have someone try to take his gun? What about Kyle's right to not be kicked in the face? What about Kyle's right to not have a gun pointed at his head? What about Kyle's right to not be hit by a skateboard? What about Kyle's just general right to not be assaulted? And we know from past court cases that just because you're owning or carrying a gun is not able to be considered provocation because it's not a crime. We had that, you know, you can use Heller as precedence for that. We just had that in the case in Connecticut that I did a video about, where the judge sided with the gun owner and said that the cops had no business using the fact that he was a gun owner as probable cause for searching his car and taking his property. I mean, this is something that does have precedence, and she's saying, well, she's basically saying that the right of people to attack a gun owner supersedes the rights of a gun owner to not be attacked, is basically her claim. And that's what it comes down to. A lot of these arguments is that they want gun owners to be second-class citizens that cannot legally exercise their rights to self-defense, and that the fact that owning a gun even makes them second-class citizens that are open to attack for even just existing. That's basically what it comes down to, what these folks' arguments are at the end of the day. And you know, it's even more slander. We have anti-Rittenhouse protesters are arrested and charged with resisting police and disorderly conduct outside of the courthouse in Kenosha. They've been charged with multiple misdemeanors and one felony. And this was yesterday that they were arrested and charged. We have Colin Kaepernick and Bubba Wallace coming out and making comments about Kyle Rittenhouse's verdict. And we also, one of these, here we go. Since people are asking about the defamation suits, possible upcoming defamation suits. After Rittenhouse acquittal, support builds for defamation fund sue the crap out of corporate media. Now, what will be interesting about this is that GoFundMe and a lot of these crowdsourcing websites took down anything that was in support of Kyle Rittenhouse. It would be interesting to see if they try to do that again now that he has been found not guilty. Prominent conservatives are calling for Kyle Rittenhouse, cleared of murder charges on Friday, to sue corporate media outlets and others for defamation. Some supporters of the teen are pledging to donate to a fund so he could take legal action against outlets and prominent figures that called him a white supremacist and other labels without evidence. What happened to him in this mob justice is grotesque, absolutely grotesque, said Glenn Beck in a video posted to Twitter. And he said that the media portrayal of Rittenhouse since the teen killed 2 men and wounded a third in self-defense last year has been an irreversible negative impact on his future. Absolutely. And honestly, this trial by media and by social media could have cost him his life. It could have cost him the trial, And like I said, I mean, the charges were coming with a mandatory life sentence. He could have gone to prison for the rest of his life because of the things that the media were irresponsibly printing about him and flat out lying about. He says, where is he going to work? You go to work now and you apply for a job and they immediately Google your name. You think he's going to be fine? He's going to get a job? I will tell you, and I hope you would feel the same way, I'd give money for his offense to now go on the offense and sue the crap out of the corporate media for what they've done. They lied about him the whole time. They destroyed his life. It is time to say enough is enough with the corporate media. I mean, I bet he could get a job at like a gun shop or like Palmetto State Armory or something like that. But I mean, he's not going to go work at like some corporate bank or something like that, or in anything with like public relations. I mean, maybe he'll pull like a David Hogg and get in the spotlight, but I doubt it. And of course, like Biden, no one is apologizing. They say, Dana Lesh over from the NRA is saying the same thing. Daily Wire and Matt Walsh and Candace Owens also joined calls for Rittenhouse to sue media. So, I mean, he is getting a ton of support if he did decide to go through with it. And with people like that backing him, I am sure that they would find a way to get him the funds. So, I believe that is all of the material that I had for you guys on all of this and the Rittenhouse recap. Gito says not to mention that psychologists aren't cheap and he'll need therapy to deal with the trauma of this whole situation. Absolutely. I mean, and it's not going to be like a short-lived treatment. He's going to be in therapy for a long time. David McCoy tells me to hydrate. I have, look at this. I have my cup of tea and I have 3 bottles of water that I brought with me. And obviously I haven't opened any of them. And my tea is almost done, but it's not. I'm really bad at it when I go on the rant. David Neal says, I understand Kyle has been accepted at Arizona University. Well, that would be good. That would be really good. And says one of the, Larry Hutton says one of the reps offered him an internship. Willem W.M. Gilland also says a congressman has already offered him an internship. Well, that's good. That's good. Carolina Infidel says if I owned a gun store and he walked in, I'd hire him on the spot. I mean, dude is a good shot, if nothing else. People are saying Beethoven cup. Oh, I have a Van Gogh cup over here. This is coffee. But yeah. All right. I see. Oh, Erica D'Amico says he's going to school to be a nurse. Really? Wouldn't that be something? Tucker Carlson is interviewing him Monday. I will watch the crap out of that for sure. Jaffo says, notice who the bullies are, the ones that don't want you to defend yourself. And Alan Burns says, do you drink from a red mug because your red lipstick will stick to it? No, actually, my favorite color is red, and I just thought that these mugs were really nice. Alright, people are asking for the baby bump, so I will stand up and I will oblige with the baby bump. Oh. So this is what I said if I don't have any business really wearing this shirt right now because it's not a maternity shirt and doesn't fully cover, but there we go. Baby bump. Baby is a bumpin'. My little watermelon here. Oh, it's getting to the point where it's a lot harder suddenly within the last week or so to get in and out of chairs. Getting in and out of bed, rolling over in bed has gotten really difficult. And the worst is actually when I'm recording a video and you guys know, I write it all out like a research essay, and then I have like a little tablet that I put up and I read from. But like if I mess up, I have to reach way over and lean out and like scroll it back to wherever I was. That has gotten really difficult, and sometimes when I'm making a video, I'm surprised it didn't happen a ton here, but I get out of breath. Oh man, and I'll tell you, I washed the dog twice in the last 2 days too, and that was really tough. The reason I washed him twice is because I washed that little dude, and then that night, last night, so I washed him yesterday, I gave the dog a bath, and that night I let him out for his final pee, and a little troublemaker found himself a skunk. He found himself a skunk to the face, specifically. And so he had to spend the night in the garage because I also didn't have any of the stuff to de-skunk him. So, so that's actually why he's not in here tonight, is because he clearly did not sleep all night and he had to get a new dog bed, and he is perched in that dog bed and has not moved out of that dog bed since. But he got skunked in the face last night, and so he got baths twice in 2 days, and he really hates baths. But that was really difficult too. That was not a fun time. It is not easy to wash a dog when you are pretty much 37 weeks pregnant. If anyone was wondering, if he hadn't been skunked, I would have paid someone to do it after the first time of trying to wash him, but I did not want him in my car smelling like that. Mike Fobwish says, do you have to roll out of bed? Like, sort of. It's kind of like a barrel roll, but then also, like, because you can't really, in pregnancy, like, your ab muscles separate some, so, like, the sit-up motion doesn't really work so much anymore. But, yeah, it's a fun time. I'm really not. It probably sounds like I'm complaining, but I've had such an easy and pleasant and happy and good pregnancy that I really don't have any complaints. It's just like, I'm used to being more mobile than I am, and especially with the last week of being told to keep it easy and rest, which obviously I didn't do a good job of if I posted like 3 videos to the channel. But, yeah, because I needed to get to 37 weeks so that I could still birth with my midwives and have my birth plan. So I was, like, told to not really do anything for the week to make sure that we got that far. People are saying free the baby. Oh, goodness. So, I guess that is it for today. It is, we went 2 hours again. My goodness. I saw some jokes of some people saying that if we went 2 hours again, I was going to end up having the baby on the stream, and that is not the case yet. Not the case yet, but I have not had dinner yet, and I obviously need to stop talking to hydrate more. So, oh, and I missed this earlier. I meant to read it, and I did not. Tim says, anybody else investing in popcorn futures in anticipation of the lawsuit? So yes, maybe you folks should look into popcorn stocks. Possibility. That is not financial advice. I am not a cat. But, I mean, it might be something interesting. And, Stephen B., thank you for the donation to the channel. All right, folks, so, we're gonna wrap it so I can hydrate and eat some food. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. We had, over 600 people at one point earlier in, the night for, concurrent viewers. We had, I think, 650 might have been the highest at one point, which is pretty sweet. So everyone, thanks for tuning in for my rant about all of the information that we had here. BS in California says we tend to ramble on as we get older. Thanks for the mods that were in the chat today. Thank you everyone for all of the super chats and the folks that hit up the tip jar as well. And welcome to the new members to the channel. Of course. Thank you to all of the folks always that support over on Patreon and Subscribestar, or like use the different links down in the description, the affiliate links. You guys are the ones that keep this channel going. And as of Monday, my mental health practice will officially be closed indefinitely. At least a year, but probably indefinitely at this point. So you are literally the guys, the folks that are helping make this channel happen and keep it running. So thank you to all of you for that. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes and all of that fun stuff. Everyone have a good Thanksgiving, because it will be after Thanksgiving the next time we stream, if we do stream. We'll see. If I have the baby, I will find a way to let all of you guys know. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you on the other side on the next video, whenever that ends up being. Good night.